Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle in installment, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today we're going to be going over the PvP patch notes and where PvP stands at the moment. PvP as a whole should be something that, should get a little bit more of a voice in my opinion. A lot of the stuff that is looked at within WoW and balancing within WoW is very tough to balance for both PvE and PvP, but PvP seems to get shunned a little bit when it comes to, really altering things or changing things up. A lot of it is done via either raid or, Mythic Plus, sort of what you're looking at in terms of who's doing the best in DPS and stuff. But they do try and change a couple things, but it's ultimately, I think, more gated towards the PvE content, which a lot more of the population, I think, enjoy, or at least find it a little more casual friendly or something like that along them lines. But yeah, I thought I'd just, go over the sort of patch notes, as there were a lot of patch notes in 9.2.5 that I didn't necessarily get to into much more detail with last week. But as always, we will be doing the weekly announcements. So the world bosses for this week are Arona Monos, which is in Ardenweald. You have Morgeth, which is in the Moor, and you have Antros in Zereth Mortis. Hop on over there, get your anima, conduits, gear, whatever you need. Make sure they are all done for this week. The event for this week is the World Quest bonus event. You get more reputation through doing your World Quest. So if you need that little bit extra rep this week, definitely make sure to do them this week more than anything. The Mythic Plus dungeon affixes. I have shunned it a bit for several months now, but I am going to be bringing it back into the weekly stuff. Obviously, there will be some weeks that I won't be able to. They're usually the ones that are either at the start of an expansion or in between seasons, stuff like that. So, Fortified, Bursting, Storming, and Encrypted are your weekly mythic affixes. Bursting being the dot that you get after you kill an enemy and can stack indefinitely. So just keep an eye on your stacks. Storming, just dodge some, tornadoes, nice and simple. And Encrypted being the season affix, and Fortified being the weekly boss or mob affix. And there was another thing that I wanted to introduce this week into the weekly sort of segment, and it is sort of the backstories of abilities. We'll be going over one ability each week, and this week I'll be starting off with the ability Bladestorm for warriors. So let me know on what you guys think about this, but it's just something a little bit extra to add into the weekly stuff, because it's quite nice to just remember where the spells came from, to be honest, how long they've been with us. Some came to us in as late as Shadowlands, like the Covenant abilities, and some came to us as early as Classic. So it's quite fun to just know the backstories of all the abilities and how they've performed throughout World of Warcraft, if they've changed or whatnot. So Bladestorm was added in patch 3.0, and this was the start of Wrath of the Lich King back in 2008. It had a few minor patches where it broke you out of Roots and Snares, which is like a month later, and you could be disarmed while Bladestorming, which came in the latest patch of Wrath of the Lich King, patch 3.3. So we move on to Cataclysm, where the mechanics changed, and Bladestorm now deals 150% of your normalized weapon damage as advertised. It was incorrectly doing 100% of your weapon damage, and it will now grant you immunity when it is cast. This is stayed baseline to the ability, even to this day, where you're just immune to absolutely everything. Mr. Pandaria, we saw it, change from a certain specialization to everyone. So now available for all specializations as a talent. Weapon damage reduced from 150% to 120%. and you are allowed to dodge, block, and parry for the duration and only perform your battle shout abilities. It also now gives you immunity to disarm while you are mid-Blade Storm. At the end of Mists of Pandaria, a year or so later, the cooldown was reduced to 60 seconds rather than 1.5 minutes. And for arms, warriors, Blade Storm deals 180% of their weapon damage, up from 120. Protection actually went down from 240% weapon damage to 160. That is a massive DPS decrease, to be honest. For Warlords of Draenor, it became a level 90 talent, swapping places with Stormbolt, and Blade Storm you can no longer use your shouts while it is active, but you can use defensive abilities such as Enraged Regeneration, Shield Wall, or Last Stand. Nothing really happened in Warlords of Draenor for Blade Storm apart from one small minor bug issue, which was an animation that affected Dwarf Warriors. So not too sure what happened there, but I'm guessing Dwarves weren't spinning like they were told to do when they pressed Blade Storm. In Legion, patch 7.0, no longer available to Protection Warriors, and its damage was increased by 5%. And halfway through Legion, or the very first patch, its damage was increased by 8% for all specializations, and it was available at level 65 for Arms Warriors, was at level 100. I'm looking at these patch notes, and I'm thinking, oh my god, patch 7.1 came out 3 months after Legion was released. That is insane. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, that's the history of Blade Storm. It's a very simple ability. Not much has changed about it compared to many other spells. Off the top of my head, probably something along the likes of Mages or Combustion, probably. But that is the Blade Storm ability in a nutshell. And yeah, I hope to do this as a weekly thing because it's quite nice to just look at spells and see where they've come from. But just let me know what you guys think, I guess. So moving on to the player versus player patch notes, the PvP patch notes. So we'll be going over the class changes and not class changes, the class what do you call it? Balancing, that's the word. I couldn't figure it out. And what's just changed in the sort of around the PvP community when going into 9.2 and sort of where PvP stands. So there is a new arena, which is the Enigma Crucible. And this is the Crucible that was meant to come in with the Maldraxxus arena. And this was where you were allowed to press the button or the center console to rise or raise or lower certain aspects of the arena. And in theory, it sounds amazing, but you can't practically do it because arenas are based around line of sight, having line of sight mechanics, apart from hunters, Kyrian hunters, who just don't give a shit about that. But yeah, it's all based around having line of sight mechanics. So an enemy team who are pushing can just hit this center console and drop their cover. It seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? So that is not in the arena as much as I'm aware anyway, because it would be ridiculous. The only time that we had moving parts in an arena is back in Wrath of the Lich King, where it was the Trial of Valor or something, and it had multiple sort of elevators and stuff like that, and you would come up from the ground into this grand arena like a Colosseum, and you would be face to face with your enemy. You'd be literally within, spellcasting distance immediately, and that is not the case at the in the game today. It is absolutely ludicrous. It gave those who stealth a really bad taste in their mouth because obviously, well, you just AoE is your first ability and they're out of stealth. It's impossible. You had to have good internet to be able to get a sap off before anything happened. So the Enigma Crucible has been added. Solo Shuffle has had a couple changes. So you have the minimum item level that you'll be scaled up to is now 252, which is really good because it's something that is used to gear newer characters. They fixed an issue that caused some abilities to not be removed from players in between rounds, and they fixed an issue that caused a round to not reset properly if a player on each side of the brawl died at the same time. The Gladiator's Distinction, the PvP set for the trinkets, has had a change. Its stamina increases, or it gives you 500 increased stamina instead of 350. This is to bring everything in line with the amount of burst damage that is within the game. Instead of nerfing classes and their damage output, just give players a little bit more HP and it will be fine and stuff like that, which is good. But I like how they're adding developer notes to all of these, which is really good. So the developer note says, in general, damage output is outpacing survivability in PvP, leading to a volatile gameplay experience. We're increasing the stamina of the PvP trinket set to reduce the effect of damage across the game. Kind of the same idea as what I had. Instead of nerfing stuff, just give everyone a little bit more base health from that PvP set bonus. The Cosmic Gladiator's Echoing Resolve no longer triggers from or provides immunity to interrupt effects. The tooltip for this will be updated in a future patch. This is the trinket that every other form of CC or interrupt will be immune. So you can get kidneyed for 8 seconds but be immune to the next stun or any form of CC and interrupt until someone kicks you or 15 seconds have gone by. This was really good for Warlocks as it allowed them to get casts off and stuff like that with Chaos Bolt, etc. The note says, while the tooltip explicitly mentions interrupts, we've heard the feedback loud and clear that this trinket is removing counterplay that players enjoy. We'll fix the tooltip in a future hotfix. I can kind of understand that because when you want to go on a Warlock, this is definitely targeting Warlocks and like Frost Mages, because they're the only classes that really use it. But when you're targeting a Warlock and you go for your go, as it were, and then suddenly they come out of the CC and they're immune to kick, so they can just press all of their buttons, not get interrupted on their Chaos Bolt, and one-shot you with like their combo pretty much. It's kind of insane, but to be honest, there is a bit of counterplay, but it's more shamans and stuff who really feel like a hit hard with this, because the whole point of their class at the moment is that they have that ranged interrupt as a healer and they're very tough to come by. I think they're the only class with a ranged interrupt. So now moving on to the more specifics of the PvP tuning. Death Knight Anti-Magic Zone spell damage reduction increased to 50%, was 20% in PvP combat. Wow. So Dome of the Ancient Shadows, the PvP talent has been removed. This is the PvP talent that gave you 80% of damage reduction to magical damage to your anti-magic zone. But 50% is just really good. It's a really good baseline buff, and the talent wasn't necessarily needed. It did feel bad to take that as a talent. So this is really good, and 20% doesn't really do a lot against a mage combusting or something like that. Mage, the Gift of the Lich, the Necrolord Covenant, or Conduit, sorry. Duration reduced by 33% in PvP combat. A note here says, Deathborn is one of the most impactful cooldowns in the game, but at the current scale of conduits, it's regularly lasting 50 seconds. We feel it's necessary to rein that in the duration of PvP. 50 seconds is so much time in a PvP match, it is unreal. Like, that is an entire burst window, and nearly getting another burst window for some classes, like a Fury Warrior or something. Whereas a mage will have this for 50 plus seconds, and then be halfway to getting it again. They'll have this for half of the game if it goes on for a 5-minute game. That's how ludicrous Deathborn's like timer is. It's kind of oppressive sometimes in like a Warlock Mage sort of composition. So I can understand them reining that in a bit. Full Monk, the Mistweaver, your reduced cooldown on Zen Focus T, your PvP talent to 30 seconds was 45. And the note says that the Mistweavers are having a difficult time responding to burst damage reliably. as they regularly have to open their primary school in order to catch up. Giving them more access to an interrupt protection is intended to let them respond to burst damage more reliably. This is a good way to go about it, but ultimately it feels bad just to stand there as a monk and have to channel your ability and have the potential to get locked out whenever you don't have Zen Focus Tea. So, it's really bad, and you get a lot of spell locks, to be honest, when playing a Mistweaver. I think they might need something else rather than just the Zen Focus Tea. If they have something else like a Trinket Cocoon, then it might be really good. They have Trinket Revival, but again, Revival was a 3-minute cooldown. Cocoon is quite a long cooldown, if I'm not mistaken, unless you take a talent. So they might need that one extra ability to help them. I know Shamans have Spirit Link, Ascendance, Earthen Wall is on a minute cooldown. Holy Priests, you have Serenity Charges constantly, Guardian on a minute cooldown. You have Leap of Faith, that's also really good utility-wise. Druids, you have Barkskin, Nature's Swiftness, you have Swiftmend, you have a lot of instance casts to just top someone, whereas, monks don't have an instant cast really to just, get someone from 15% HP to at least 50% to get them safe or in a secure enough position. They usually have one or two things, but they can go and be expended really quickly with the amount of damage that's in the game. So I'd like to see them tackle that sort of side more rather than just giving them 15 seconds, less on a PvP talent. But, we'll see how it does. I don't think this will make Mistweavers viable at the moment as it is, though. Sad. For Priests, you have Discipline and Shadow. The Discipline changes. Your Blaze of Light increases the damage to Smite and Penance by 30% instead of 15%. Your Power Ward Shield absorb amount increased by 10% in PvP. And they fixed an issue that reduces the value of Power Ward Shield critical strikes in PvP. So the note for this is we're looking to give Discipline Priests more offensive options in PvP, but also feel that Power Ward Shield has fallen off in terms of its relative strength compared to other parts of the kit. This makes sense. Power Ward Shield doesn't really do much apart from apply Atonement to the friendly target. Atonement being how you heal through your damage. So hopefully, and Discipline is all about damage reduction and sort of the absorb damage with, Rapture as a massive shield absorb, Pain Suppression, which is a damage absorb, stuff like that. Power Ward Dome, which is a damage reduction. So it's not a healing output class, it is more the absorb and sort of offensive ability and capabilities that give it its prowess. So hopefully this might bring them into it, but again, Disc is really tough to play without anything like a jungle or anything like that. So we might see it at the very high level in jungle cleaves, but apart from that, it's not going to beat Holy at the moment. Holy is very good in terms of what it has to offer. For Shadow, your Power Word Shield absorb amount is also increased by 10%, and they fixed an issue that reduced, the Power Word Shield critical strikes. So they just gave it to Shadow as well. It's kind of meh, to be honest. You want to not spam it as a Shadow Priest because you might not have enough mana for Master Spell and stuff like that. But it might go a little bit of a way. You might feel it, you might not. Them things. For Rogues, you have the Recuperator Conduit, healing reduced by 50% in PvP combat. This, I believe, is going to be really big because a lot of Rogues can just sit in and spam their Crimson Vial, or, they're very self-sustaining at the moment, so this will obviously hit it quite heavily. And for Outlaw specifically, you have the Enduring Brawler talent, which stacks up to 15 times now, and it was 20. Enduring Brawler is the PvP talent that gives you a certain amount of, or gives you 1% of your health for every stack that you have, so 20% increased stamina is pretty huge. It got Outlaw Rogues to about 100k, and they are very, very tanky with this. So 15 is a bit more reasonable. You can still look to target them potentially at 15 stacks, but it's only time will tell if it really does hit them that hard. For shamans, shamans do need a little bit of love right now, but their healing stream totem healing is increased by 20% in PvP combat, which is good. For elemental, you have Raging Vesper Vortex, the Kyrian power, damage reduced by 33% in PvP combat, and Earthshock's damage no longer reduced by 10% in PvP combat. I've noticed the Earthshock damage a bit. It's what's killed me a couple times when playing my warrior. The warrior's undergeared, but it's with all of the, lava burst overload procs, and then this right at the end is that little bit extra just to tip me over. For enhancement, Chain Harvest, the event variability, damage and healing reduced by 15% in PvP. This makes sense. You're getting it quite a lot in PvP combat at the moment with the reduced cooldown through your Flame Shock. So overall, if it's a longish game, you'll get about the same amount of use out of Chain Harvest numbers-wise as you would have in the last patch, potentially. So, you might be using it 10 times, but at 15% reduced effectiveness. Instead, you would have used it 7 times, but you would have had, the 15% increased damage and healing. So it'll probably equate to about the same. It might not be as bursty or whatever, but it will be a great utility tool for enhancement shamans, whether it be a good defensive or offensive capability. Still, it will be very useful. Restoration, your Earthen Wall totem, the talent absorb, is no longer reduced by 30% while in PvP combat. This happened a while back in Legion or something. So that is massive. 30% for Earthen Wall. Earthen Wall was good, but 30% really does bulk it up a bit. So the note for this is we want to address some of the big swing movements created by Vesper Totem and Chain Harvest, but compensate them with more sustained healing, damage, and mitigation. So the healing comes from Healing Tide or Healing Stream Totem, and the mitigation with Restoration is obviously the massive Earthen Wall Totem buff. That is huge, and that could maybe bring Shamans just back into the fold a tiny bit. So for Warlocks, your Demonic Embrace now increases your stamina by 20%, was 10% in PvP combat. Your Demon Armor PvP talent has been removed. This kills Warlock. This straight up demolishes Warlock. I'm going to say that right now. So, I don't know why they hit Demon Armor, but I've played my Warlock recently with the Trinket being there and Demon Armor, and you have fun with the one-shots from Chaos Bolt and stuff like that. If I didn't have Demon Armor against these melees, I'm getting run down anyway. I'm getting absolutely run down, chunked from 2 melees just hitting at me 24/7. Even when I'm kiting, like, quite efficiently. Having no Demon Armor just makes it even worse. So Demon Armor, what it did was give you 10% increased stamina and 160% increased armor. So it would bring you to about 24%, I think my physical damage reduction was from armor. And 24% might seem a lot, but honestly, with the melee damage that is being outputted in this patch, this will probably rein in the Warlocks, reign of terror in 9.2. Yeah, that's just rough. That's rough, especially with the Trinket nerf for the Echoing Resolve. I think Warlocks are done for this patch. It'll be very tough for Warlocks to do much at the moment, which is very sad, because it's quite nice to see a caster actually get up there, apart from mages. So, for Affliction, we have a new PvP talent, Shadowfall. Gain the Nightfall talent with 100% increased damage to gain its effect. If you already have this talent, you may select another in the same row. Kind of meh, we'll only see how that plays out. Nightfall is very much bleh. It gives you a proc on your Shadow Bolt, an instant proc, stuff like that. So only time will tell. But I think there's going to be better uses for the Affliction Warlock PvP talent. And Demonology, your Felguard's Legion Strike now reduces effectiveness of healing on the target by 25% in PvP combat, and it was 10%. This is huge. This is a permanent 25% if you can keep your pet on them. So Demonology is good, but Demon Bolt got nerfed, like, I think a few months ago. So their damage output hasn't really changed, and I've not seen a Demonology Warlock for a while, to be honest. The note says that we've increased the Mortal Strike effect on Demonology's pet in PvP to help their effective damage. Again, I think that it's going to be very tough to do much with this, but only time will tell with Warlock. I think it will be very tough for Warlock coming forward, though. For Warriors, Fury Warriors, your Depth of Insanity Conduit effectiveness reduced by 50% in PvP combat. Your Battle Trance PvP talent now generates 3 rage, was 5 every 3 seconds, for 18 seconds after using Raging Blow twice in a row on the target. And the note says that 9.2.5 comes with a bug fix where PvP talent Battle Trance wasn't being activated by the Raging Blow's replacement spell Crushing Blow from the Reckless Abandon talent. The above changes are intended to manage the effective buff Fury will be getting from that interaction. So, it's not too bad for Fury Warriors. They still output quite a lot of damage just from what they do. They're constantly on you. They're constantly swinging for the hills. They're constantly just training you down, not caring. So, looking at all of this, it doesn't really say that it will shift the meta in terms of what PvP is at the moment. I do think that Shamans might come into the play a bit more with like melee cleaves or maybe a Boomkin DH, but again, very tough for that composition to get anywhere high at the moment, just because of how casters are, to be honest, and because you have 3 targets there that are all quite susceptible to dying to multiple things. Boomkin can die to a rogue very easily, so can a Shaman. Shaman can be trained by 2 melee. Boomkin can tank most of the melee, but it's going to be tough. Demon Hunter can get swapped to very easily, very squishy without their Metamorphosis blur or whatnot. So it's one of them things. The meta won't change, but a couple classes that we might not have seen in the past might come back into fruition. Maybe a Discipline Priest with a jungle or an Enhancement Shaman with a melee cleave. Only time will tell, to be honest. I think we'll see Warlocks leave the meta. I think, Warlocks might just be heading out, which is very sad. I'd love to see any sort of caster up there, apart from Mages. Mages have been at the forefront of World of Warcraft for Classic to now. They've never really been out of a meta. They've never really been a bad class. They've always been top tier for the most part. PvP state at the moment, it's very melee friendly. Now, what I mean by this is if you play a caster, you're constantly having to cast your spells to get damage off. So you're constantly casting for 1.5 seconds, or whatever your spell cast time is, 1 second to 2 seconds for your Chaos Bolts or whatever for Warlock. But you're constantly doing or casting, and you're constantly having to reposition, get into good positions, and you can be kicked on your damage. You can be CC'd on your damage a lot easier. The kick is the big thing, because if you're playing a melee, your damage is instant. If you are connected to your target, your damage is instant. It can't be stopped unless you are hard CC'd, so Cyclone, Polymorph, anything like that. Whereas if you're casting a Wrath on a Boomkin, it can be kicked. Okay, you can't cast Wrath. Then you try and cast your other school of magic, which is Lunar, and you try and cast a Starfire or Lunarfire or whatever it's called. I think they're 2 different versions, but Starfire. Get kicked on that. Okay, you're doing no damage. You've been locked out of both schools of magic. You can't do any damage. That's it. You're just sitting there for however long you're locked out of the school of magic, not being able to do anything. Whereas you've got 2 melees hitting you for, 6 to 10k DPS. Like, what can you do? The amount of damage that melees can output, as well as their defensive capabilities, are just as good as that of a caster, but a caster has to actually cast to get their damage off. People complain about warlocks. Being able to one-shot someone with chaos bolts, like a double chaos bolt. Now, there's ways around this. It's not fun to die to a double chaos bolt from 80% to 0. It's not fun, I will admit it. It is fun doing it though. So that. So yeah, it's not fun, but at the same time, there are weak auras to tell you that he's got his instant chaos bolts, his 2 chaos bolts, and you can prepare yourself for these casts by either pressing spell reflect as a warrior, a defensive capability as a death knight, or any other class, whatever you have, whether it be a shield as a mage or something like that, your triune ward, feint as a rogue, 30% damage reduction, bark skin, whatever it is. But you can also see him casting the ability. Now, even with power infusion and whatever he's got, it will still be about a 1.5 second cast on his Chaos Bolt. Now, in reality, that doesn't seem like long. But in an arena at high level play, it is you can deal with it. You can deal with that cast. You can understand what's about to happen, and you have enough time to respond to what's about to happen. Whether it be CC and then kick him, whether it be, well, it can just be kick the Chaos Bolt now with the trinket change. It's very tough. And when a caster is OP or in the meta, it's usually due to effects that are outside of what they can control. So what I mean by that is the trinket. The trinket made Warlock viable for a time because it allowed them to have these windows of opportunity that they could use. Whereas melees have that window of opportunity so much more in a game. A caster team might get 2 or 3 attempts. A melee team might get 6. You have a lot more opportunity to kill as a melee team rather than a caster team. So it's very melee friendly in my opinion. And I think you either have to do something with regards to melee's defensive capabilities. When they come out and push onto a target, they can be exploited a bit more in terms of what they actually have to use to just stay on top of that target. Because I've seen melee teams who press every single button before they even reach the caster. They'll press Avatar, they'll press War Banner, they'll press, Blade Storm, they'll press Grip, A-Bomb Limb, they'll press absolutely everything. They'll press every defensive capability they have just to not care. And they'll just kill the caster there and then. So they should be exploited for being able to do that a lot more so. And either you look at the defensive capabilities melee have, or you rein in their consistent damage a bit more. Maybe to bring it aligned to maybe casters, because not all casters can pump out massive amounts of damage. If you look at a Fire Mage does no damage outside Combust. It does nothing. If you look at a Boomkin, outside of Celestial Alignment, they do nothing really. They can maybe do a few Star Surges here and there, but it takes a while to build up that astral power to throw the Star Surges out. You look at, I was going to say Elemental Shamans, but Elemental Shamans are just shitting out, lava bursts like they're going out of fashion. If you look at Shadow Priest, it's very, over time damage. It's hardly ever bursty like a melee cleave. So I think it needs to be looked at in terms of where casters stand, because casters don't have fun in many aspects of WoW arenas at the moment. It's all, if you look at, looking for group, there's Frost Mage Destrolock, and then there's probably a couple of Elemental Shamans here and there. I see no Boomkins in the looking for group. I see so many melee cleaves though, and it's unreal. absolutely unreal. That's just where it is at the moment. Casters can be king, then it might be melee king, or like the next patch. You never know, but throughout Shadowlands, I feel like it's been melee most of the time. It's absolutely insane, the damage output that they have, plus the defensive capability. But that is all for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. Make sure to check out all of the social medias down below, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.